Welcome back to the Invincible podcast. It is me, Eldin. Today, it's just going to be me. Today, we're going to do something different. It's not going to be an actual podcast. Today, we're just going to do a review of Manchester City. Yesterday, on the 13th of January, they played Brighton. So, this is a new series I'm going to start doing. Probably going to do mainly reviews, maybe do some previews, maybe of bigger games. But I'm going to do this of all Manchester City games here on YouTube, reviews. You already know Arjun does the same on TikTok. So if you go on TikTok, the Invincibles, and you check out, he does Chelsea reviews every single game. So if you want to check out his Chelsea reviews and what he has to say on those games, that's on TikTok. I don't know if he's gonna start doing it on YouTube, but on YouTube we're doing Manchester City and that situation with that. Also, upcoming we have a new podcast coming out all about Ballon d'Or winners from 2000 on. It's a two-part series. So the first part is from 2000 to 2009, I think. So we're gonna drop that very soon. So if you want to take a look at that, make sure you're subscribed, you got the notifications on, and then make sure you like this video. And if you want me to continue, if you're a City fan, if you're not a City fan, if you're just a football fan, just make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and just support us along the way as we hopefully grow into a bigger channel. But for right now, the Invincibles, Manchester City, and they played Brighton yesterday. So it was yesterday. 1-0 victory. It was quite comfortable but very edgy game. I think throughout so far this season I haven't been able to watch many City games, but I was able to watch yesterday, and it was very edgy. It was very but it was comfortable throughout the game. They only had about one shot on target. I have the stats over here. So yeah, they had about one on target, three off target. City had about six shots on target, so it was pretty comfortable. We weren't really scared with Brighton, but we're gonna start off with uh the lineup. The lineup for us was Ederson, Cancelo, Stones, Diaz, Zinchenko, De Bruyne, Rodri, Gundogan, Mahrez, Bernardo, and Foden, who was the goal scorer. Phil Foden scored the winning goal. It was right before the first end of the first half, but we'll get to that. City walked into the game. I think we were fifth with two games in hand on United and Liverpool. We walked in. We were 7 points behind United, two games on hand. It was a big victory. We needed a victory, and we got it. And then Brighton walked in. I think going into the game, they were one spot above relegation, so they were just right above relegation, I think. So it was a big game for them as well. They've been kind of back and forth. It's not been good for Brighton so far this season, but overall, City, I mean, 1-0 victory. Uh, for the most part, I have kind of gotten used to it in terms of since crazy stat at the end of the game was Fonen's now our top goal scorer. So think the moral of this season is this, main storyline or however you want to put it out is that City and offensively aren't completely not the same that they were for the past three seasons. And it really shows that we lost Sane, even though he was barely playing last season. But another thing is Aguero's been out for practically the entire season. Jesus has been, on and off. So it's tough offensively. Our wingers really have, and the one thing is I think the reason we weren't playing as good or as, you know, the City way, I guess, in the beginning of the season was because of the way Pep kind of laid us out. I think that our problem was that if you look at our formation, it was always our wingers were so wide and they always just stayed up and were wide. And that allowed us to really press teams and attack them in ways where our width players were the ones creating for us. And the one thing is, in the beginning of the season, our fullbacks were doing that, and our width players were cutting inside, and that wasn't working at all. So finally, Pep switched it up. He now has Cancelo and the fullbacks cutting in, and then the guys who are supposed to stay outside, such as Sterling and Foden and Bernardo and Mahrez, they are outside and they are providing for us, which, I think we were so good at it in terms of when we were playing with Sane is because he was so good. He had Sterling on the right side, Sane on the left side, and it was as if it was perfect because right now when Sterling plays on the left side, you know, he's always cutting into his right foot. So now, when he plays on the right side, when he was with Sane and it was, 2, 3 years ago, he had to, stay out wide and then take on defenders, which is what Sane was so good at, was taking on defenders and beating them with pace. And then he was also so good at getting in behind and then player like De Bruyne playing him between defenders and then he finishing it on his left foot. So it was so good. And that's why offensively we were so good, because not only could he do that and then score, but he can also take on a defender and then cut it back. And then we were getting easy goals like that. This season's not going to be, has not been the same. It's been very difficult for us, but we're figuring it out. We're finally, going into a bit of form. We've had, have a decent unbeaten streak so far. So it's been good so far. You know, if you really look at him, and I was looking at it earlier, for as bad of a start we had this season, everybody was saying, oh, City's not looking good at all. We're one game behind United and Liverpool with 4 points behind. A win, and they play each other this upcoming weekend. So let's say that game ends in a draw. United's 5 points ahead of us. We play that game week as well. We win our game. We're 2 points behind. We play our game in hand. We win. We're up by a point. So that's why we're so close. And it's crazy to show that, like, to see how everybody's talking about, oh my God, United's been so well. The reason they've been this good, and or they seem as if they're this good, is because City and Liverpool have really dropped in their performances. But thankfully we're picking it up. And this game, it started off kind of sluggish. It didn't start off the way we played against Chelsea, when we just started off what 2 goals right off the bat. No, it was more sluggish. We were trying to cut it in. Sterling was on the bench, but Foden, he's been great this season every time he's played. So the thing is, Pep's not been playing him as much, but every time he's been played, he's constantly running. He's always, he's like another Jesus who they're just constantly running around trying to get and pressing. And the thing is, we were pressing so much, but credit to Brighton, they were playing around their press. They were playing really good from the back, and they were playing it through. It's just at once they get past half the midline, they don't know what to do. They didn't have many options going forward, but they were playing around our press, and I think that's why it was so difficult for us to really put in a goal, because once we had the ball, they were playing with all guys, everybody back, and then every time they had the ball, they were able to play it around our press. you know, it was tough. We had some good chances. De Bruyne had a good shot that it was clear. He was played through. He tried to put in between Sanchez's legs, but Sanchez had a great save. He was kind of good. There was one point where I don't know who it was. I think it was Dunk who played them a ball back, and Sanchez picked it up inside his box. So it was a free kick inside the box, but that was blocked immediately once De Bruyne had the shot off. So chances weren't. We didn't have any big chances. De Bruyne had the biggest chance so far in that whole first half. We just couldn't break through him for some reason, and finally, I think it was De Bruyne played in to Foden, and then the thing is, Foden, like I say, he's constantly running, he's constantly trying in terms of, he just took it on himself, cut it in with his right foot, his weaker foot, put it in. It was a really near post finish, beautiful finish, 1-0 right before half. It was about the 45th minute. So it was a good finish by him, and he got the goal. Second half, it was kind of the same. It was, and I'm expecting, we've scored what, 19 now out of our 20 something, 25 goals, I think, in the Prem. We've scored 19 of them in the first half. So it shows that we used to be the team that would score in the last 15 minutes. We'd score 2, 3 goals in the last 15 minutes. Those are things, second half goals were our thing. And now we flipped that to first half and then defend. And that's because our defense has been so great. I think Stones and Diaz have really gone, they've really created a huge partnership. And you got to give to them. They're keeping Laporte, Stones keeping Laporte off. Laporte now has an injury. I think he's been kind of, as well as Ake, but they have really created something that once they come back, I think Ake's going to be used more as a left back than a center back. But once Laporte comes back and he's fully healthy, it's going to be really tough for him to get minutes because of the great defensive partnership that Stones and Diaz have created, where they're constantly talking. They're constantly, they're both leaders. Like Diaz he has come in and he's been the perfect replacement for Company finally. Season too late because it should have happened last season, but he's been the perfect replacement for him because he's a natural leader. You know, he leads by example and he's always talking, and him and Stones just have this connection. Cancelo's playing great, and I think it's because of what Guardiola did is he's kind of having them cut in the midfield, so it allows the wingers to stay wide, but it also allows the depth inside the midfield to dominate the midfield as well. So I think it's working perfectly. Zinchenko's been on a good run of form as well. We're constantly switching left backs. At that point, well, we've had Arcade play left back, Mendy, Cancelo, now Zinchenko. So everybody's playing left back at this point for us. Gundogan's been great. I saw a stat now on I think it was Rodri. He has been great this season, I think, as a defensive midfielder. He is constantly nobody gives him the credit that he deserves. So there is a stat out there on Twitter actually, if I could find it. Sorry if it's a little bit too late. I mean, not late, kind of dragging it on, but there was a stat talking about it was a stat on Rodri where it was like recoveries, some type of recoveries, ball recoveries, where the top three were keepers, and then Rodri, and then the next four players were keepers as well. It shows that he's doing so many of the things that the normal person doesn't notice, but nobody gives him praise for that because nobody notices it. But he's been great. He's been a great signing. So many City fans, I always see on Twitter after games or stuff like that, they're just bashing him for no reason. I think he's been great signing for us. And then Mahrez, he had a good time in the game. He wasn't really creating much. I think as a team, we weren't really creating much. Brighton were defending great. Ben White had a fantastic game. He's a great defender. He was playing in the midfield, but he's a great defender and he had a great game. Um, and then towards the end, well, it was about 90th minute. At this point, Sterling was on, and then who else came on? I think it was Jesus came on for Mahrez and Foden, but ball was played into Dunk. It was throw in. Ball was played into Dunk. He tries to head it back to Sanchez. It was a bad header. It was not a great idea. It wasn't a smart idea by Dunk. And I think it was, who was it right there? I think it was De Bruyne was there. Attacked it. He was going after the ball. Sanchez had to come out and get the ball. Takes the man penalty. And something came out where De Bruyne was too tired, I think. That's what Guardiola said. But to take it, or I don't know, that was really stupid. I think he should always be our penalty taker. But Sterling stepped up and then he missed it. So it stayed 1-0. It could have been 2. It was, those are the things. Like we're lucky that we weren't 1-1, or Brighton, it wasn't another team where we needed the goal. We still finished out the game in those 90 something minute where it didn't really matter, but Sterling shouldn't be taking penalties. I think De Bruyne, I don't know what the situation was, why De Bruyne didn't take it, but Sterling, he's not comfortable. He is not a natural. You look at some of the misses he's had, where the ball is just square to him and then he misses a wide open goal. That shows that he's not calm on it. So if he can't finish those types of chances, what makes you think he's going to be calm enough and clinical enough to finish a penalty when it's just him and the keeper? So it wasn't a great idea. I don't want Sterling to take any penalties for us anymore. I think either De Bruyne or Aguero, even though Aguero's missed his fair share of penalties, he still finishes them. He still has that killer instinct, and that's why he should stay, him or De Bruyne, depending on who's on the field. If it's both, then, it's really up to them. I think it should be De Bruyne because he's been kind of more on a roll with penalties, even though he's missed one earlier. I think it was after the restart from COVID. I think it was when he missed, not this season, but it was last season. But at the same time, maybe Gundogan's somewhat of a decent penalty taker. He scored that one in the Champions League final, Dortmund versus Bayern. But Mahrez could take penalty, I guess. But I think it's just De Bruyne or Aguero. It was a bad miss. 1-0, though. We get the goal. We get the win. Now we play Palace next in the weekend. Um, it's gonna be a tough one, just because every time we play Palace, it's always tough. They always somehow drag out a result against us. It's always. I remember what it was a season where we were under. It was the season we won the league. It was 100 points, but that season I think it was both De Bruyne and Jesus got injured, but Palace had a chance to win it. I forgot they had a penalty. I think Luka Milivojevic missed the penalty. Ederson saved it. So they're always tricky when we play against them. There's a season when they beat us. Was it last season? Yeah, they beat us. So it's just like, or it was the season before that. They ended up beating Trent Townsend had that fantastic goal. It's always tricky. So I'm not gonna go in and say, oh, we're gonna get a win. But we play on the 17th. That's Sunday. That's City against Palace. We're at home, and then from that point on, we have Villa. That's the game that should have been on the first week. So we're getting that game back. So those are our next two games in the Premier League. We're third right now, 1 point behind. I mean, one game behind, and we're about a point behind Liverpool, 4 points behind United. And I think it depends on what happens between Liverpool and United in their game. And if they can end up being, I think a draw is best, because that point United will be on 37 points. If we beat Palace, we're at 35. Plus, we have a game in hand. We win, we're at 38. We're on top of the league. It could go perfect for us, but that game in hand is against Everton, which is always tough. I think it's at Goodison. So it's going to be tough, but I think for the way we started the season, we're on perfect form right now. This is perfect. And I think this is the type of season where having a strong defense really comes in handy. I think if it was the same as last season where defensively we were just all over the place, I think we would be screwed and we wouldn't be at the spot that we are. But having a fantastic, solid defense, and I, consider them maybe even the best in the Premier League. So right now, in terms of our defense, we have the best defense in the Premier League, but Diaz and Stones have been fantastic. So that's my game in review. And City beat Brighton 1-0, Phil Foden.